If you're a worker who believes something at work isn't fair and wants to understand what can be done, or an employer who wants guidance on what fairness and the law actually require, this discussion is for you. Hello, I'm Vicki Erenstein Ya Toivo. I'm a lawyer working mainly in labor and employment law and in related areas like social security and social protection. Over the years, I've worked with workers, trade unions, employers, and government in Namibia and internationally, and across the public and private sectors. In Namibia today, there's a strong focus on creating jobs, supporting young entrepreneurs, growing businesses, and protecting vulnerable people. We also have a fairly strong set of labor laws and employment and social security laws. But in everyday practice, many workers and many employers are not always clear about their rights and responsibilities at work. This often leads to unnecessary conflict, uncertainty, and mistrust in the workplace. And sometimes this weakens the very protections the law is meant to provide. Many of the same practical questions keep coming up about pay, working hours, leave, contracts, and fairness at work. That's why I've decided to share practical information on these topics with workers, employers, and the wider public through social media and similar public platforms. I encourage you to use this space to share your experiences and raise questions. Many of these are common problems that create unnecessary conflict. I hope that sharing and unpacking them through this platform will help reduce that conflict, improve working relationships, and support stronger, more successful businesses. At the heart of everything I'll be speaking about is fairness. Fairness to workers and fairness to employers. I'll try to look at these issues through a fairness lens, and I encourage you to do the same. To ensure that the podcast reaches more people while I grow my own networks, I have partnered with Vacancies Namibia and NawaZone to reach more Namibians. Please comment with the topics that you want to be covered in this podcast. Today, I will want to talk about wages, how a worker's pay is agreed to, how much and when wages must be paid, what should appear on a pay slip, what can be deducted, and what a worker can do if wages are late or not paid at all. I want to say up front to workers, if you perform services for an employer, you're entitled to be paid and to be paid on time in accordance with the law. And to employers, in general, the law does not accept excuses for non-payment. But unfortunately, not all employers pay wages to their employees as they should or when they should, and they leave their employees without the funds that they rely on to pay, to put food on the table, to pay their rent, to pay for medical treatment, and to support their families in general. This is unlawful and unfair. Now, what is included in pay? Workers are paid basic wages on the one hand and often allowances and fringe benefits on the other. The basic wage or salary is what you are paid for an amount of ordinary hours that you've worked. For example, if you are hired to work a 40-hour week at $20 an hour, those are your ordinary hours and that's your basic wage. Beyond work for ordinary hours, a worker may be paid premiums for overtime, night work, work on Sundays and public holidays, but we will not talk about them today. I'll talk about them on another occasion. Example of allowances or fringe benefits are housing, shift allowance, danger allowance, or payments for medical aid or pension. I need to mention something that I left out. A worker's pay period could be daily, weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly. That will determine the ordinary pay. Okay. Now, a wage can be agreed to in writing or verbally. Even a verbal agreement is legally binding. If an employer says this job pays this much per hour, $20 per hour for a 40-hour week, and you accept the job, that's your agreement. This becomes a part of your contract of employment. But the problem arises when nothing is put in writing and there may be a difference of opinion about what is said. So the best thing is put something, even something simple in writing, send a message, confirm it, send a letter or a text. All right? Now, according to the law, wages must be paid within 1 hour after the end of your pay period. If you're paid on a monthly basis, then 1 hour after the end of your shift at the end of the month, you must be paid. You must be paid in cash, or if the employer, you and the employer have agreed, it can be put into your checking, into your bank account. Employers must provide the employees with some proof of payment, all right, or a pay slip. The proof of payment must include the name of the employer, the name of the employee, the period worked, gross wages, deductions. When I say gross wages, it should also show if they worked overtime and these other things, but then deductions and the net. In other words, the gross salary, taking away the deductions, and that's what's left as the net pay. This proof protects both employers and workers. Now, only lawful deductions may be made. What is a lawful deduction? Taxes, Social Security, union fees, or if the employer loaned the employee or advanced the employee some money, can be recouped by the employer. But the employer cannot unilaterally deduct money for such things as penalties, breakage on the job, shortages in inventory. It cannot be done that way, all right? Big problem. What if the wages are not paid, or they're paid late, or the right amount is not paid? First step is the worker should raise it calmly with the employer. It may be a legitimate mistake. I wouldn't assume that something was done on purpose if the wrong amount was paid. If the money is not paid, you still have to raise it with the employer. If the employer doesn't pay, the worker must approach a labor inspector employed by the Ministry of Labor. They have them in every region, and register your complaint. The labor inspector will check the employer's records, and if the payment has not been made, they will demand it. Now, non-payment of wages is a very serious issue. If your employer has a telephone or has electricity or water, the employer is billed for it and they must pay. They can't ignore that. It's even more important that they cannot ignore an obligation to pay a worker. If that's a real contractual obligation, and it must be paid just like any other obligation. The employer will face penalties and in order to pay if they don't pay. Now, employers are required to keep payroll records for 5 years, at least. Employers, to avoid this problem of non-payment, try to manage your cash flow, and if all else fails, you must borrow money so that you can meet your obligation to the workers. Workers are advised to keep records of the hours worked and keep all of the documents that you've been given by your employer about your pay. The key message that I want to leave you with today is very simple. Wages must be agreed to clearly, be paid in full, and paid on time. When that happens, disputes are minimized and workplaces function better. This is a matter of legal compliance, respect, and fairness. Next time, I'm going to talk about the national minimum wage, because that's related to this topic. You need to know at least how much you must be paid under the law.